Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is Jonas Reports for the 27th of February, and look at this. It's been a beautiful fill back in. Remember, we had this dip below the red line we had marked, but we were looking at very strong steel readings through most of this, with cyan below red for, a tremendous portion of it. We started to get the first early break here that led to a minor one because we had the reset, but then we ended up with this one that did not have, and you see, there's no dip of that steel below the red, the reset, and then boom, this is where we began to talk about, and I said, hey, if you want to keep your long holdings, now's the time to start buying long-term puts to match them to create a married put effect, which means that if the stock drops, you don't really care because within that married put, you could sell calls on it. And when it bottoms out, you'd be able to sell puts for a turn back up, particularly when it shows that we're not there yet. But the signs of it, potentially, we've reached this hyper oversold level, which you can see with that. Geez, look at that minus 23 readings. I mean, that is just completely let the bag out of the wind. And we're also seeing some buyers stepping into this with the steel rising. However, the problem with that is the steel's going to get up so high, and we're barely going to be approaching 23% in that, and then it's going to have to ease off a little bit. So the buy the dip people have been doing that, and it's been creating these little tails to the opposite side. And that's great, but all we've done is fill back the pop-up move, and just because it took so long to do it and so little time to reclaim it, we've talked about this for years as well. Markets fall 66% faster than they rise, and so no shock with any of that, and nothing surprising for what we were seeing. We knew there was just a matter of time before the contagion effect of the coronavirus was going to cause this kind of an impact. The real question is the systemic panic and whether or not it will cripple economies. We know what it's done in China with their late response, and the problem we had there was we couldn't get real data coming out of it, and we suspected everything that they were saying was a lie, which now has turned out to be true. The real breakthrough moment was the Princess cruise ship, that really showed both the size of infection rate, the duration was longer than their expected 14-day, and the mortality rate. Even in Italy here now, we're recognizing, we're seeing a 3% mortality rate, which is higher than most, it's more significantly higher than most flu epidemics in that, and also you know, the certain aspects when they're looking at the virology of this, and its contagion aspect being, you know, up to 1,000 times more than typical viruses, because there's an HIV element component to it. So this is going to create a longer duration for the effect of it, and how well it's maintained. Now, see, everyone talks about trying to prevent it. It's like, no, that's not really what the governments are looking to do. They really just want to slow the spread so that they can handle the overflow, and that is really what the market is going to be looking at. Are we going to be able to maintain some level of productivity work to allow, you know, the fact that, you know, yes, some people are still going to get sick, but the end result is, you know, even with that 3% death rate, if that holds up, 97 out of 100 people are going to be okay. They're just going to have the flu. So keep perspective there, which is not easy for some people to do, because it's just the real panic for like here is the supply disruption, because we knew that you know, you had this 90-year-old guy walk into a store here in Italy. He was freaking out because he couldn't buy any pasta because there wasn't any, and he's like, what's going on? What, this isn't even this bad in World War II. It's sort of funny because exactly, and that's the whole point. Anyone who wasn't prepared for this a while back would be shocked that all of a sudden scrambling to try and do things. But if you were in immediate need of food, there wasn't any available. And for no particular reason, because life is absolutely normal here. There's nothing's dramatically changed, though the military did start to come into Florence the other day, and they're now here in a much more enhanced capacity. I don't know that they're going to need to pull a trigger on quarantining, because the spread of this is already so fast, and the latency, too many people have moved around, it's everywhere, and so what effectively are you going to do? It's just not really going to make that much of a difference. But from a market standpoint, so NASDAQ filling in more of these positive extremes, getting all the way back through to here. We have this last one over there, and then we have a couple more that we're going to continue just right to about here. This is close. Excellent from a viewpoint, and we know that those tend to get filled. And because the U.S. now has significant cases in Manhattan, the EU, it's like, yes, we can have money come back to Europe because there's no safe haven in America, and that's what you're seeing here. Not to mention we had the super oversold with the bicycle that came right at that key threshold. Isn't it amazing how they just kept it right there and then bounce it right off of exactly this line we've had for, how long? Yeah, ever since the algos told us that was the key threshold. And that's the power of knowing that kind of information. And then, of course, like I said, this is the problematic issue with the oil and the systemic unemployment situation that may cause throughout the Midwest in a deflationary kind of way. And that really is going to be the interesting one. The pop we had, governments trying to buy up some of the supply. Will they continue that to try and help? That would be an interesting one, because that would be at least an effective means at stimulus, because stabilizing oil prices would certainly help as far as preventing the systemic job loss through the Midwest and other oil areas. So we'll see if they're smart enough to do that. I doubt it. Gold, again, with a little bit of the selling in that, a lot of times people have to, especially if they're net excessive long, but I think the case for gold is still to go higher because of the uncertainty aspect of where things are at. And from an intraday standpoint, lovely. And as I was showing my longer term short, now a couple hundred points to the plus side. Let me check real quick exactly what the entry value. Okay, just look, my entry for the short was 32.90 from a few days back. So yeah, and I just liquidated a little bit at the bottom of this one, just thinking that we might reached an oversold, but still it leaves me just a couple 20 contracts left. That's more than most, but needless to say, we broke through all of our previous algo levels, but they're going to be the attractant coming back up, and of course they'll provide the resistance at the 3109 range. So we'll see how it plays out there, but pre-market here, nice little dip, recovery. I would expect that they'll try and get it back up and even take out this previous range up near the 3132. Would not be shocked to see that at all. However, I think the volatility is still going to be there, and that is the beauty of following the signals with that, because I think there's going to be some decent outside gains. I do suggest every one of you check out the Skype chat, because member H2 put up the alteration that I've always suggested with the Power Mode 2 on some of those buy signals, that it's difficult with the languaging on exits for the computer program, but if you're following along with the trade, you're certainly able to adjust your stop and create either break-even or slightly profitable situations, even before the Power 2 can register them. And I don't think it's a bad idea at all. It's something I've suggested from day one, because it's certainly an effective way to capture more gains, not to mention just limit some of the losses, because we already know with the massive gains that we get on the program that it's just a matter of the more you limit losses and reduce that risk factor, the higher the profit factor, and it can be astronomical. So just a little attention to it, and fantastic results. So as always though, trade well. I will certainly put up any new details on the Skype chat. Have a good one.